We got you in there for that. We got you in there. What is that? Ooh, it's a big week for Pirates baseball, and welcome to the Sports Porch Sweep. Sports Porch Live. We are live on Facebook on the Sports Porch, Pittsburgh, beautiful Chicago, New York. We're on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We're all over the freaking world. And you can catch the Sports Porch podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts. And, of course, on theporcheslive.com, theporcheslive.com, theporcheslive.com. And you don't have to click the Philadelphia tab for that. You can just go right to theporcheslive.com.
Get your brooms out.
That's right. Get your brooms out.
Sweep them up. Sweep up the birds.
So, big story of the week is, believe it or not, guys, after all the years of doing this and ignoring the Pirates, finally, there's a little bit of relevance. And if in case you're not aware of this, we're a live show on Monday nights at 7:30 Eastern time, live on social media. Please catch up with us there if you like. You can become a part of the show. You can get your comments in the chat. You can ask questions. We love that. We love our fans. We love the people that join us and support us. But also, we drop the podcast right after the show. And currently, your Buccos report after every Pirates game on the podcast on Apple, iHeart, and everywhere else. And I'm enjoying it. And the Pirates, after getting off to a hot start, had their worst May, I think one of the worst Mays in franchise history. Mm-hmm. They come back, and so far, undefeated in June. Okay. Ooh. And the big news there is that they swept they took 2 or 3 from the Giants on the West Coast, which was the turnaround. They swept the Cardinals. And listen, the Cardinals have a great lineup. They're just not playing good baseball right now.
As Scott Rowland says, St. Louis is baseball heaven.
It really is.
They took down the Redbirds.
They did. They took down the Redbirds. And tonight they are currently they're losing at the end of the first 1-0 to the Athletics. But here's one of the things I said on the Buccos report yesterday. Okay. It was great to sweep the Cardinals. It was a big test. It's a division rival. In order to stay relevant in this division, because it's fairly evenly matched, you have got to beat the teams in this division. You've got to win those series. However, you cannot roll over and die just because you're playing the A's. When you can't assume the A's are going to come in here and roll over. There's a lot of players on that team that probably want to get out of town, and they've got some talent, but it's just, it's like it's like a what do they call the end of a presidency? Lame duck. They're a lame duck baseball team right now. But yeah. I'll tell you what, I hated to say it last night, and I hate to say it right now, but the Pirates have to sweep the A's if they're going to make a real statement. They can take it 2 out of 3 ain't bad. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But if you're going to stay relevant, you got to sweep this team. You can't let them come into Pittsburgh and win. The other exciting thing is that Kutch is only three hits away from 2,000, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And I think he's a double away from 400. So we'll have a question about that. And I'll just lean into you guys right now as far as, how do you feel about the Pirates after that horrid May, coming back and taking 2 from San Francisco, sweeping the Cardinals? They're on a 5-game win streak. They're 4 games above 500. What do you think that says right now?
I think it says it's good news.
That's it. That's all you got.
Well, no, I mean, they weathered the storm. I mean, they were at a critical point where, if they had, let's say, lost 4 or 5 in a row, season's over.
Yes. Well, probably.
Yes. Probably. But instead, they came back and steadied the ship, got a couple games over 500. And if you can stay there for a long while, you're going to be in the wild card race.
This is true.
So, huge. Now, I would say, though, regardless of, it would be great if they could sweep the A's. But the main thing you want to do, you just want to keep winning series. If you keep winning series after series after series, then you can hopefully maybe get your record up to 7, 8, 9, 10 games over 500, and then you're really in the mix.
Yeah.
So
I think it's possible. What do you think, Steve?
I think that somebody planted Todd Ross into our comment section, because when he says that the Pirates need to open their checkbook, that's
Right.
like my mantra when it comes to the Pirates, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I do have to agree with you that, when you're playing against a division rival, and look, the last time they were actually in the playoffs, that's who they lost to. They lost to St. Louis. And, I'm talking ancient history here, but still, nonetheless, if you looked at the beginning of the season, you said, where will the Pirates be? Well, they'll probably be in last place at this point, and St. Louis or Milwaukee will be in first or second. Well, switch it around. Now we're actually the ones that are in second, and St. Louis is in last place. So if you don't at least have a little bit of optimism from that, then you're never going to have optimism for this team. So I've always said that I think the Pirates need to be a good team, and because they'll never be a great team because of what Todd says. They'll never open up their checkbook to go get a superstar who will take them into the next stratosphere. But that being said, it finally seems like some of these prospects are coming around, and the pitching and the hitting is kind of, coordinating to a point where they're more relevant. I don't know what to make from the fact, and Chris, I'd like your opinion on this. I don't know what to make from the fact that they go through such a big winning streak and then such a long losing streak, especially as long as it was in the month of May, other than they played against quality teams, and maybe they're just not going to be competitive against quality teams. And the good thing about that is our division is terrible. So maybe it's just you have to beat, the St. Louis's and the Milwaukee's of the world, and then just take 2 out of 3, or every once in a while sweep the really bad teams.
Yeah, I think that the issue here is that and DG is in the house. What's up, DG? Good to see you.
David.
I think the Pirates in the beginning of the season, it was almost as if they were the underdog, and that was their identity, because every team needs an identity.
Yeah.
And then when kind of reality set in and Cruz went down, and he did go down pretty early. They ended up playing very well even after he went down. I think they kind of lost that identity and they started to question themselves. Now, look, that's not to say that, like, Mitch Keller is pitching lights out, and by the end of this year, we will know if he is going to end up being the ace that everybody thought he could be. Okay. It's still a long season. So
Right.
One of the things I don't like are these calls for Mitch Keller in the Cy Young conversation. Like, look, you can talk about a Clayton Kershaw in the Cy Young conversation 3 starts into the year. You know what I mean? Because he's demonstrated that he's got a track record, or back in the day, Justin Verlander. But you can't put Mitch Keller in any Cy Young conversation yet, because he hasn't strung together a full year worth of pitching lights out. Now, he is definitely strung together this year, and, getting towards the end of last year, making it look like he's starting to understand how to pitch. And it's true. But after Keller, it's kind of a crapshoot. You've got Oviedo, who I think has great stuff, but when he loses his confidence, it's hard for him to locate pitches. And they start
just being the guy, by the way.
He just being the guy. Yeah. So I think the Pirates are a team that once they went into that kind of downward spiral, they thought they had this identity that really was not their identity, and they needed to get it back. And they kind of rekindled itself, which I think was interesting. Santana he was out for a couple series, and then as soon as he came back, it seemed like the team kind of righted itself again. They kind of calmed down and they started playing good ball. And there was one game where for his veteran presence in the lineup, he hit the ball the other way for a ground rule double. And these younger players they have, you can tell that they're still kind of feeling their way through their at bats. You know, they're still hacking at things. They're still trying to pull the ball. And Santana kind of shows them that, like, look, maybe I'm not a 260, 270 hitter, but I know how to work the count, and I know where that pitch is going to locate or what the pitcher is going to try to do. And it's called situational baseball. And so they're a young lineup still learning how to do that. I do think there's a little bit more talent in the younger players they have now versus last year, the year before, you know, going back 7 or 8 years. And I think I also I've talked about this on the Buccos report. I can't stand the way that Shelton changes this lineup every night. And I know you guys are making fun of me. You know, how many more times are we going to talk about Bay should be lead off? How many more times are we going to talk about Hayes should bat 5? But here's the example. Okay. Hayes yesterday was 3 for 4. Okay. They move him in this game. Shelty moves him down to the number 6 spot. Why not just leave him in the number 5 spot? That's where he's hit the best all year. You know, why are you doing that? Why is Castro?
Was it a lefty righty thing?
It could be, but for me, consistency is what younger players need, you know, and I continue to think that G1 Bay should be the leadoff hitter. And we'll see. Reynolds, he's got him penciled in there every night at second. And I think that has a lot to do with, you know, again, the identity of the team. When there's a consistent lineup and you know the role that you play, whether it's in the lineup or in the field, it's easier for you to settle into that and start to understand situational hitting. And when I've seen so much, there was a 2-out bunt the other day. A 2-out bunt.
Like what? I mean, bunting for a single?
Yeah. He
was it somebody who can beat out bunts?
No, Mark. I think it was Marcano. 2-out, 2-strike bunt. Like what? Who made that call?
Yeah, that's an odd one.
Yeah, like where are we getting that from? So that being said, I think it's a team still trying to find its identity, but I am encouraged by the fact that they were able to turn it around. God forbid they lose to the A's tonight. Seriously. I mean, I would hope that they're not fragile enough to turn a loss tonight. And it's early in the game. They're only losing 1-0, bottom of the second. And the pitcher for the A's is not very good. But we'll see what happens. I definitely think they have a chance to stay relevant because I think what you see is their potential when they turn things around. But again, with the Pirates, like they could be relevant near the trade deadline and still sell off half the team, you know?
Well, that's the one thing that I would be a little nervous about. Not that he's anything special, but Stevenson being traded this early. I don't know what happened, but I really felt like in the first month of the season, Stevenson was pitching really well.
He was, but he had actually started to kind of fall off there. But I don't know if they had some arms that they wanted to bring up because they immediately brought up 2 other arms. Mm-hmm. I also know that they just promoted their catcher from AAA to AA to AAA. Mm-hmm. What's his name? Henry Davis. There's been because if you look at the position right now, I mean, Hedges is a good catcher. He's a good game manager, but he's a terrible offensive. Mm-hmm. He's just not good at the plate, and they need more production there. So it's kind of hard to decipher. You're right.
Well, I mean,
what they're doing.
The question is, I understand he wasn't pitching well, but he was pitching well in the beginning, and
yes.
wasn't he actually the setup man in the beginning of the year?
No, Holderman's always been the setup man.
Okay, well he was pitching.
He was the guy before. He did pitch in the 7th.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, it's kind of like, wait a minute. I mean, like, are we not going to allow a guy to sort of like work through it? You know, like to me, it just seemed odd that he was traded this quickly.
And he was traded for a second base prospect.
And maybe the prospect's great. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's hard to break the lineup in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think the flip side of it is Tampa Bay, who's a first place baseball club, thought enough of him to think, hey, we could use this guy at the back end of our rotation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe there was something else going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of.
Like
Maybe him and his wife are sleeping in different beds now.
That would explain a lot to me, anyways.
That would explain a lot. That would explain a lot. Now
Yeah.
I get it.
You guys got to listen to the pregame. We're going to start doing a pregame for the Sports Porch. So anybody who is, you got to have thick skin though. You really do. You got to.
By the way, your point about Hedges, he's
Yeah.
batting 179.
That's
I
right.
mean, that's just pathetic.
You have to get better production from your catcher.
I don't care if he calls the best game ever. There's
Right.
no way what he's doing behind the plate when he's out there calling, pitches is helping his 179 average.
Yeah. Yeah. And
You have to bat at least 205.
yes. Yeah. Well, you would hope higher, but right. You got to be above the Mendoza line. Yeah.
Holy moly, that's terrible.
No doubt about it. So, it's really nice to see that the Pirates turned that ship around, and they fell one game under 500, and immediately it was almost like, as a team collectively, they said, you know what, we're better than that. Like, this was a horrible month. We can't go under 500, and they've righted the ship, and we'll see what goes on. So they got 3 against the A's and then 3 against the Mets here at PNC Park. I would really like to see them come out of this 6-3 at worst, and they're off to a good start because they already have 3 victories. So, putting aside they better sweep the A's thing, they need to notch at least 3 more victories, win one of these series. Preferably it would be against the Mets, because that has wild card implications.
Right.
So, it kind of goes both ways. So, okay, fine. If you're going to lose two more games, fine, lose them to the A's and take 2 out of 3 from the Mets, but we'll see. It's exciting. I appreciate everybody that listens to the Buccos Report on the Sports Porch podcast. I have a lot of fun doing it. And, drop a comment, leave us a review. If you listen to the podcast, we're trying to collect reviews. If you're going to leave a bad review, don't. But if you're going to leave a good review, leave a good review.
Let the people say what they want to say.
Yeah, you cannot influence what the people feel, Chris.
I know, it's a free country. It's a free country.
If they want to puke all over their computer.
Where does it end if you try to, thwart free speech?
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Where does it end?
That's another podcast. We got a couple comments here. Let's get these comments in here. DG says he also thinks Hedges has a weak arm for throwing out runners. That's an interesting thing, because I do think that the pitch clock, the adjustments, and we didn't get to that with the Phillies when we were talking about that on the Sports Porch Philadelphia, but I think the pitch clock is good for baseball. I think he's done a lot of great things, especially in watching it and having a report after the game. But I also think it has changed the way, obviously, that catchers have to react, the reaction time. So I don't necessarily know about a weak arm. It may be more like the adjustment of, like, they've only got a certain amount of time to throw the pitch. They can only, throw over twice to keep the runner. And so they're kind of off guard there. Because what I've noticed is that it seems to me more teams than not actually have pretty poor percentages in throwing out runners now. Don't you think so?
Well, that's always been the case.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only a few catchers in the league that throw out a lot of runners.
Yeah, and 30% is considered a great number. Right.
And they're getting better jumps off first and second now too, because of the pitch clock.
Jeff from York, what's up, Jeff? He's bummed because my Diamond Bucks lost to Virginia this weekend, college baseball. Oh well. DG says he threw late to second base from his knees once. I love you, Jeff. Once allowing a runner to score from third. Yeah, I hear you. I just think, DG, that pitch clock and the whole dynamic of the game, it's kind of a learn on the fly thing. I'm not saying you're wrong. He may have a terrible arm, but I'm saying that it's changing the way that a pitcher and a catcher have to manage that as well now. And I do think that teams are being much more aggressive on the base paths than they were. You could see that, obviously.
I think they were saying it's kind of toned down a little bit, though.
Since the beginning of the
Yeah.
season.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Pirates went from the first month of the season, it felt like every single runner was stealing every single base.
Mhm.
And then in May, they were losing so much, it was like, who's going to steal? And then more
Right.
guys were getting caught. So, all right, guys, that's it for the Pirates for right now, because I'm probably going to have to do a Pirates report after the game. So let's move on to something near and dear to Steve's heart and our heart. Of course, it's the Steelers. Steve Jones is taking reps with the first team, and I know you love that.
Yeah, one thing that I keep saying is look to see what Broderick Jones, where he's going to be in his development. Is Tomlin going to put him on the second team? Is he going to treat him like a regular rookie? And the fact that he's playing with the first team already leads me to believe that he's being treated like he should. He's going to be on the first. He's going to be on the first team. That's where he's going to get all his reps. You can't beat it. I mean, that's going to do great for his development, especially with all the other guys that are up there. Then I think it's just going to be good things. So nothing wrong with Broderick Jones running with the first team.
I agree. I think that shows you that they're kind of penciling him in there. And I think that, listen, even though we know what Tomlin's protocol is, you look at a guy like him and then you look at the guy that he would be replacing in the starting position, and then you just look at the line in general the last 2 years, and I don't care what your protocol is, you'd have to be nuts not to give him first team reps and get him in there right away, because he's got the potential to be one of the best tackles in the game. And that's what makes all the difference for a guy like Kenny Pickett trying to take that next step. If that line is playing great and Kenny Pickett isn't, then we have our answer.
I think we already have our answer.
Anybody?
I think we already have our answer when it comes to Kenny Pickett. I totally believe they're going to turn him into a game manager. And I think in the long run, that's going to be terrible for him.
Yes.
Because I think by the end of this year, I'll give him half of this year because he didn't really play all the games last year. So I'll give him half of this year. But the second half of this year, he's got to look like a superstar, at least for 3/4 of the games. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
And I just, we kind of beat this horse probably too much, but
we beat a lot of horses around here.
But it's not a dead horse yet. It will be soon if we keep beating it. But
the PETA people will be after us.
But the reality is that's what they want to do with Kenny Pickett, and I think it's just terrible with the talent that he could be surrounded with the offensive line that he might have. I just hope at some point Kenny decides, you know what, screw Canada. I'm just going to start chucking it deep. I really hope that's what he starts doing. I think that'd be great for him.
Yeah, and that's like the cloud over this whole season. Isn't it like a cloud? It's like the Steelers had a draft that I think most fans would say we're impressed with what they did. We're happy with what they did. There's a lot of potential in what they did. And then exactly what you said, Steve, if you watch Kenny Pickett his last year at Pitt, he wasn't a game manager. Mm-hmm. He was the guy that created. Okay. Yeah, it's college football. It's not the NFL. Things change, but he created, that entire exciting time with his feet, with his legs, with his arm, taking risks. And I'm with you in that. I think he's going to have to, and we'll see, he's going to have to create in order to feel like he's part of the whole thing. And with Canada there, that's the one thing this year that just bums me out completely. It's just like, what do you think, Schwaber? Sitting in your seat, being an Eagles fan and a secondary Steelers fan, doesn't that kind of put a cloud over the whole season?
Maybe. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, because I do think there's a chance what Steve's saying could occur, where Pickett just decides to kind of take more of the reins himself and just kind of, make mistakes and apologize later.
Right.
So he might do that. The other side of it too is that it also isn't necessarily the end of the world if Kenny Pickett is not a franchise quarterback. I mean, you can still win the Super Bowl with I wouldn't say a game manager quarterback, but I would say like a top 15 type quarterback.
Sure. Joe
Right?
Flacco.
Yeah. I mean, Nick Foles,
it's always got to go Nick Foles.
Well, no, but that's basically what he is,
Yeah.
Good year, one Pro Bowl, that kind of thing.
Right.
But think Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like Brad Johnson, won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And did he do anything phenomenal? Not really, but the Tampa Bay defense was great, and he threw a little 8-yard slant to Keyshawn Johnson for a touchdown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can still win that way. I think the Steelers fans are just so used to having a franchise quarterback,
spoiled.
Having been through Ben. And look, there's always a better feeling when you have a franchise quarterback, because you figure hey, if it's the beginning of their career, hey, next 10 years, we always got a shot, right? So you don't have to depend on, you could get away with having an average defense, if you have a top quarterback. But I think it's still to be determined. We'll see what happens. I mean, honestly, I would be surprised if Kenny Pickett is a franchise quarterback, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's a good quarterback. And what I mean by good is top 15.
Go for it, Steve. You've been shaking your head the whole time.
I would normally agree with Mark on this, but there are so many good quarterbacks in the AFC now. You have to be in the top 5 quarterbacks in order to beat some of these guys. Just managing the game now, these guys can score 28 points in the first half. That's how good these offensive are. So I don't, in as good as I think the Steelers defense can be, when you've got to play against, and they're not going to play against them in the regular season, but when they play against Mahomes, when they play against, when they play against Buffalo, when now they got to play against Aaron Rodgers, and I don't actually think that great of Aaron Rodgers, but he's better than Luke Wilson. So I just think that when you have such
Zach Wilson,
Zach Wilson, who beat the Steelers last year, by the way.
That's true. He did.
It was his one shining moment.
Yeah, his one shining moment. I actually think I'm better than Zach Wilson.
No, you're not.
No, you don't think so?
Definitely not.
Really?
And you don't have nearly as much game.
I mean,
with the older ladies.
Oh my God, you're hilarious.
Yeah, that is
I
true.
still sleep in the same bed as my wife.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I don't think so.
Did I just out us all in that?
Are you bragging about that? Or
Yes. I'm lucky enough to be welcome.
By the way, that's I would like to get back to the Steelers conversation.
No.
All right. Steelers, go ahead, Steve. Tell us why Kenny Pickett is never going to win a Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, I didn't say that Kenny Pickett's never going to win a Super Bowl, but the Steelers actually have to start with winning a playoff game. They haven't won one in 6 years. And I know, we are spoiled in Pittsburgh. We do have the most amount of championships, at least in the modern era.
Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a problem. That's built into Philly DNA is you always got to refer back to that.
No, but I'm just saying, I know we're spoiled from that standpoint, but we really haven't been spoiled in the past decade. One playoff win in 6 years. I mean, that's pretty bad. I mean, that's up there with Cleveland Browns have more playoff wins in the past 6 years than the Pittsburgh Steelers do.
And I guess you could say really, really bad, considering that they did have a Hall of Fame quarterback during that time.
Right, exactly. I mean, and you could go back to the AB Le'Veon Bell years where they actually won a couple games, but still never made a Super Bowl with that team. It was arguably maybe one of their most talented teams ever. So I mean, that's my problem is they have to think about getting one into the playoffs next year. They absolutely have to make the playoffs next year. And they literally have to win at least 1 or 2 playoff games in the next 2 or 3 years. And I'm just saying you're not going to do that with a good quarterback who manages the game when you're playing in the AFC against those other great teams.
Yeah, and what I was referring to is the fact that every time we bring up the number of Super Bowls that our respective franchises have won, Mark always has to throw in championships from before it was called the Super Bowl.
No,
and
that's
nobody
just,
cares about championships anymore. They only care about Super Bowls.
No, they don't. Why do you think
Yeah.
the Green Bay Packers announced themselves as 13-time world champions?
It's the only team I know that does it.
Yeah. Nobody else does.
Guys, it's when football started. That's when it starts.
Okay.
You got it?
One Super Bowl and he
Like,
thinks he's right.
I think the funniest thing ever would be for like people who make that argument. The most hilarious thing ever would be if the NFL moves to creating a division in Europe, like in the next 10 years, and then they just decide to do away with Super Bowl and call it the World Champions. And then like some team's going to come out of nowhere, like the Buffalo Bills, and they're going to be like 4-time world champions. And everybody's, but we won the Super Bowl. Super Bowl doesn't matter.
Yeah, right. I think that'll happen.
That's stupid.
I think that's stupid.
Everything counts. Everything.
Mark, they're always going to call it the Super Bowl, even if they do move into Asia and Europe, because they are absolutely going to do that. I agree with you.
Oh, you think they're going to move? Yeah. Okay. I got you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But it'll always still be called the Super Bowl.
I don't know, though. Could be the World Bowl.
Well,
nah,
maybe, but
you can't.
I mean, think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
they had the AFL before it was the NFL that merged with the AFL, thanks to Joe Namath. And after that happened, nobody remembers who won all those AFL championships.
Yeah. Nobody remembers.
Nobody cares.
It
doesn't matter.
Schwab.
Yeah.
Nobody. And nobody cares.
That's not true at all.
Nobody cares how many
It's absolutely
championships the Eagles
that's
won.
not true at all.
Huh?
I mean, that's not true at all.
I bet you if I asked 5 people who watch the NFL on a regular basis how many Super Bowls the Steelers have versus how many championships the Green Bay Packers have, I can guarantee you that 4 out of 5 will be able to name the Steelers, and 0 out of 5 will be able to name the Green Bay Packers.
Well, you're then not talking to anybody in Wisconsin, apparently.
I mean,
yeah, I could easily get a fair-weathered Green Bay fan, and they wouldn't know.
So DG is talking about George Pickens, who said he was snubbed with no Pro Bowl selection. I think you're right, DG, and that is if we're going to kind of
wait a minute. Are you insane? You think he's right? George Pickens, he wasn't a Pro Bowl receiver last year.
No. I think DG is right. That the attitude.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you want me to pretend that I think George Pickens is right, just so we can continue this argument. Because you got really passionate there.
Well, I just thought it was ridiculous.
I do too. I actually
make yourself more clear when you speak.
Okay.
I think George Pickens is right.
What? Shut up. You're just saying that. You're just saying that now.
Here's what I think about George Pickens. If that's what it takes for him to get excited about this year, to think that he got snubbed from the Pro Bowl, I'm 100% behind it. I'd rather him be focused on that than focused on his Instagram or his TikTok page.
I can see your point there. I can see your point, but it is one thing that kind of concerns me, and I think this is a greater issue in the NFL. And we've talked about this in previous years. It started with Juju, and I think, and DG's chiming in again. I just worry about our history of flaky receivers. Right. When they start to go down that path of personal branding and that starts to take over, and when you're drafted, of course, on the Steelers, you get a little bit more exposure because it's the Steelers. And right. I worry about that. I think that the guy needs to put his head down and play. He's got to prove that he's more than what he was last year before he can be a Pro Bowl receiver. Now, once again, here we go. Right back to it. You know where I'm going.
I
You
was
got
going
the
there
cloud of
first, but you
Canada.
beat me
You
to
got
it.
the cloud of Canada over this whole
Yeah.
thing.
Jet sweep.
Blows my mind. It blows my mind. I mean, God, get rid of this guy. I mean, seriously, if I don't see in the first, and this is me personally, if I don't see in the first game like a real running game and throwing the ball over the middle and down the field and like treating it like an NFL offense, I may just stop watching right then and there. If I see a jet sweep in those first 2 series, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. I'm not watching.
Class starts at 9 p.m.
Thank you. I'll be there. I'll be there, Schwaber. All right, real quick. Calvin Austin apparently is dusting Patrick Peterson, but is Patrick Peterson really going to go full speed? You know, the guy knows when the guy knows when to turn it on or not. Does that really mean anything? You know?
No, it doesn't mean anything. What I think it means to me is that he didn't know who Calvin Austin was.
Yeah.
And he probably lined up against him once and he was like, oh, this guy, he couldn't even really make the team last year.
Yeah.
Or
and he's only 4'4".
And he's hurt. I'll just kind of backpedal. And he just went whoom, right by him, you know, and then he was like, oh, I guess I need to learn a little bit about who's in front of me before I make any judgment calls. That's all I think it really is.
Yeah, I don't think it means anything at all, but it'll be nice.
Great veteran presence.
It'll be nice. It'll be nice to have this kid who, you know, supposedly is very, very speedy, although he's kind of short. But you know, it'll be nice to have another option there, because I am not
jet sweep.
Yeah. If anything, it adds to the jet sweep presence. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Hayward on a jet sweep.
Yeah.
By the way, Hayward's going to make the team, and they're going to end up cutting Gentry just because he's Connor Hayward.
Of course.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100% too. I would.
No, I think that Hayward's better than Gentry, though.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, I mean, you don't
No,
think
he's not. No. Gentry's much better.
Let's talk about Jaylen Warren. Let's talk about him. More carries this year? I think they did a good thing in giving. No?
Same.
You think same?
I think plus or minus 10% from what he had this year.
Yeah. I'm telling you, watch him.
Hopefully Harris is going to go into the season healthy.
Yeah.
And he's going to have a bigger load over the course of the season. And I think he will play well.
Yeah.
Hopefully behind an improved offensive line.
Well, that's the key. This is the year that he has got to prove that he is as advertised. Now, it's not that he's had bad years. He's had bad lines. But when he has been given holes, he doesn't really have a vision, or maybe he does, and once real holes open up, we'll see that. That's what I'm looking forward to this year.
Here's the thing. When you say as advertised, you know, what are you talking about? Because, you know, I mean, everybody thought he was going to be a good running back coming into the league, but nobody said he was Barry Sanders.
No, but I think they thought that he was going to be a little bit. He ground out his yards. I think they thought he was going to be a bigger impact player, and he just wasn't. You know, and everybody blamed the line.
I think he kind of was in year one, and actually in year two, when they started playing better, he was playing well.
He was playing well. Yeah, but he's not a home run hitter. He's not going to hit a home run, and I think everybody thought that they they would occasionally get that home run out of him.
Remember, he was injured last year at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. I mean, look,
don't worry, he's good for 1,600 yards. Write it down.
I mean, yeah, and look,
I'm going to write that down.
Not every back is you know, destined to have an 85-yard touchdown run.
Right.
I mean,
he'll be a top 5 back in the league this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's like a little bit more in the LeGarrette Blount type mode, where he knocks over a bunch of people, but it's a 45-yard run. He's tackled at the 5.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's move on here. We got the NHL playoffs. I do have a comment coming in. Todd Ross. Of course, we agree with you, Todd. No jet sweeps. Please. Please get that out of your friggin' repertoire.
Bubble screen.
I want to thank you for subscribing to the Sports Porch podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, you can hear us a replay every Sunday night on American Busker iHeartRadio at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and catch us on theporcheslive.com, theporcheslive.com.
Theporcheslive.com. I have one more favorite play I want to say.
Okay.
Bubble screen to Deontay Johnson running backwards.
Yeah.
1 catch, -2 yards.
So Hockey Jesus is in the house.
Jesus.
Hockey Jesus is in the house. And he did do his Hockey Jesus Stanley Cup preview the other night, but what he forgot to do is actually predict who he thought was going to win.
I know.
So lay it on us, HJ. What's going on?
Well, I did say before, the game 1 synopsis. I did say what I was going to predict at the end of the preview, which was I actually do think that Vegas Golden Knights will raise the Stanley Cup in 6 games, and that was I even said to you, Chris, before the game even started, like that's where I was going with it. That being said, Game 1 was quite entertaining. It was a really good game. Like the first period was the best period of hockey in the whole postseason. The back and forth was really good. The hitting was solid. Not a lot of cheap hits. There was a little bit of extracurricular stuff, after the whistle, around the goal, that sort of thing. Florida likes to do that. Florida's very good at getting other teams to, kind of get distracted from what it is they want to do during the game by, kind of knocking them around after the whistle, at least in the first period. And, when Florida scored the first goal, they actually scored a shorthanded goal. Only the 3rd time ever in a Stanley Cup Finals that the shorthanded goal was the first goal that was scored. The other 2 were actually by Detroit teams. And it didn't even matter. I mean, because what happened was Vegas came out and then they scored a power play goal of their own, and they were getting a lot of power play opportunities because Florida was kind of gooning it up a little bit and not being very careful with their sticks. They were doing a lot of holding, and like I said in my preview, the problem isn't the first line for Florida. The problem is the fourth line, and the fourth line just played really well for the Golden Knights. They were giving them problems in the first and second period, and then they had to make adjustments on their defensive side to kind of slow them down, and then that allowed the first line to shine. But really, I was surprised that it was more about the power plays and the penalty kill in the first period, because actually both teams are pretty terrible at the special teams for whatever reason in this postseason. It really hasn't mattered. But the bottom line is Bobrovsky was human in the game, and they need him to be superhuman if they're going to win. He had like an 867 save percentage. Normally he's at like 937. Aiden Hill just has to be good enough. He's not a great goalie, but he did make a great save in the second period. And if you've seen any of the highlights, basically he reached behind him and you put out that big paddle and it went right off his stick. And then actually Nick Cousins, who was a former Gold Knight player, one of the original members, he then went to shoot it again because it bounced right back to him. And then I think Pietrangelo or somebody like that stopped it, and it went poof right up over the net. And it was a wide open net, because he's basically laying in front of the net with only his paddle in front of the net. That was his best save of the night, and it probably propelled them to take the lead. That being said, it was a tie game. They ended up winning 5-2. Vegas did, but it was 2-2 going into the third, and it wasn't until Bobrovsky gave it was really kind of a leaky goal from White Cloud just kind of shot it on net and it went under his arm. That's a save that Bobrovsky has made every single time in the playoffs. And if I'm a Florida fan, I would be worried about that, because if Bobrovsky does that again tonight, they could be in big trouble.
So you're predicting Vegas in 6.
I'm still predicting Vegas in 6. I think Florida might come out with a win tonight, honestly. I don't think it really. I think they almost have to, because I think if Vegas takes a 2-0 lead, Florida's been so good on the road and they've kind of been okay at home. I think for them to not win a game on the road, I think that's going to play with their mind a little bit. And the other thing was, at the end of the game, Tkachuk and Bennett were just it was really kind of interesting. They just, I don't know if you've seen these hockey scrums where, there's just a bunch of guys all together, and normally, it's just a bunch of people jawing and talking to each other. Tkachuk literally was with his gloves still on, was just punching people. It was so funny. He punched Haig, who's kind of the big guy on that first line. Actually, I think he's a defenseman. Anyways, he punched him twice, and then Jack Eichel came around. I don't know what Jack Eichel is doing in a scrum, by the way. He should be nowhere near Tkachuk. But then Tkachuk was basically doing the same with him. And you could see the referees there, like they had enough of it. They gave him a double minor. They gave him 4-minute penalty, but they also kicked him out for doing that.
Steve, did the long layoff kill the Panthers?
No, actually, they came out. They came out probably outplaying Vegas in the first period. I think what killed Florida was dumb penalties, and I think they got to stop with the dumb penalties, and they have to get better. They have to score that goal, like that one that Aiden Hill stopped. That's the goal they have to get. They always have to get that goal. And they probably, I think they hit like 3 posts in the game. And normally for them, those go in. And instead of going in this time, they just didn't, they banged off the pipe and knocked out. So it actually was a pretty close game. 5-2 doesn't sound like it was a close game, but because they had all those penalties at the end, they ended up scoring a power play goal, a 5-on-3 power play goal with an empty net. which is just weird. It's like you look at the statistics, and I think they went 3 for 6 or something like that on the power play, but that third goal was an empty net goal. So I don't even really know if you can count that, but that's what it looks like in the box score. So
we're going to get a Hockey Jesus update tonight after the game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. Looking forward to it. So remember, you can catch the Sports Porch podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. And you can visit us on the web at theporcheslive.com. Theporcheslive.com.
Theporcheslive.com.
That's right. And your Buccos report after every Pirates game, which, by the way, like I said last night, you can't think this team's going to roll over and die.
Trap game.
3-0 A's in the bottom of the 4th. And dare I say, as of this point, Rodolfo Castro is up to bat. The Pirates are hitless.
They are hitless, but they do have an error, so they got that going for them.
Yeah. So it's not going to be a perfect game by Jay Sears. Oviedo is not pitching his best. So this is what I fear before we sign off for the night. This is what I fear. It's a tale of 2 Pirates. It's a tale of 2 teams. And all the hype around sweeping the Cardinals, you got to turn around and you got to ride that, and you can't take the A's. You have to take the A's seriously. They're a professional baseball team. So, hey, it's only 3-run deficit. They got a few more innings left.
They came back from 5 against St. Louis.
Yeah.
They're good.
Well, and that was a finally kind of thing. That was like, finally, they're down a bunch of runs and they're able to come back. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Well, listen, guys, until next week, catch the podcast, listen for the Hockey Jesus, listen for the Buccos report. And I'm just going to start the music right now. And Schwaber's going to sing us out. Thank you for listening to the Sports Porch podcast. Thank you for watching on social media. You can catch the Sports Porch podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your freaking podcasts, or on theporcheslive.com, 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 and every Sunday on American Busker iHeartRadio at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's it. We are out. Let's go, Bucks.
Bye.